Debauchee, one who has so earnestly pursued pleasure that he has had the misfortune to overtake it. Defame, to lie about another, to tell the truth about another. Defenseless, unable to attack. Degenerate, less conspicuously admirable than one's ancestors. The contemporaries of Homer were striking examples of degeneracy. It required 10 of them to raise a rock or a riot that one of the heroes of the Trojan War could have raised with ease. Homer never tires of sneering at men who live in these degenerate days, which is perhaps why they suffered him to beg his bread, a marked instance of returning good for evil, by the way, for if they had forbidden him, he would certainly have starved. Dependent, reliant upon another's generosity for the support which you are not in a position to exact from his fears. Delusion, the father of a most respectable family, comprising enthusiasm, affection, self-denial, faith, hope, charity, and many other goodly sons and daughters. All hail, delusion! Were it not for thee, the world topsy-turvy we should see. For vice, respectable with cleanly fancies, would fly, abandon virtue's gross advances. Dictionary, a malevolent literary device for cramping the growth of a language and making it hard and inelastic. This dictionary, however, is the most useful work. I is the first letter of the alphabet, the first word of the language, the first thought of the mind, the first object of affection. In grammar, it is a pronoun of the first person and singular number. Its plural is said to be we, but how there can be more than one myself is doubtless clearer to the grammarians than it is to the author of this incomparable dictionary. Conception of two myself is difficult, but fine. The frank yet graceful use of I distinguishes a good writer from a bad. The latter carries it with the manner of a thief trying to cloak his loot. Ichor, a fluid that serves the gods and goddesses in place of blood. Fair Venus, speared by Dam, restrained the raging chief and said, "Behold, rash mortal, whom you've bled, your soul's stained white with ichor shed." Mary Toke. Iconoclast, a breaker of idols, the worshippers whereof are imperfectly gratified by the performance, and most strenuously protest that he unbuildeth, but doth not reedify, that he pulleth down, but pileth not up, for the poor things would have other idols in place of those he thwacketh upon with the mazzard and dispelleth. But the iconoclast saith, "Ye shall have none at all, for ye need them not. And if the rebuilder fooleth round hereabout, behold, I will depress the head of him, and sit thereon till he squawk it. Idiot. A member of a large and powerful tribe whose influence in human affairs has always been dominant and controlling. The idiot's activity is not confined to any special field of thought or action, but pervades and regulates the whole. He has the last word in everything. His decision is unappealable. He sets the fashions and opinion of taste, dictates the limitations of speech, and circumscribes conduct with a deadline. Immoral, inexpedient, whatever in the long run and with regard to the greater number of instances men find to be generally inexpedient comes to be considered wrong, wicked, immoral. If man's notions of right and wrong have any other basis than this of expediency, if they originated or could have originated in any other way, if actions have in themselves a moral character apart from and nowise dependent upon their consequences, then all philosophy is a lie and reason a disorder of the mind. Immorality, a toy which people cry for and on their knees apply for, dispute, contend, and lie for, and, if allowed, would be right proud eternally to die for. G. J. Impartial, unable to perceive any promise of personal advantage from espousing either side of a controversy or adopting either of two conflicting opinions. Impostor, a rival aspirant to public honors. Impunity, wealth. Indifferent, imperfectly sensible to distinctions among things. You tiresome man, cried Indolentio's wife, you've grown indifferent to all in life. Indifferent, he drawled with a slow smile. I would be, dear, but it is not worth while. Apollos M. Gogol. Inadmissible, not competent to be considered. Said of certain kinds of testimony which juries are supposed to be unfit to be entrusted with, and which judges therefore rule out, even of proceedings before themselves alone. Hearsay evidence is inadmissible because the person quoted was unsworn and is not before the court for examination. Yet, most momentous actions, military, political, commercial, and every other kind, are daily undertaken on hearsay evidence. There is no religion in the world that has any other basis than hearsay evidence. Revelation is hearsay evidence. That the scriptures are the word of God, we have only the testimony of men long dead, whose identity is not clearly established of, and who are not known to have been sworn in any sense. Under the rules of evidence as they now exist in this country, no single assertion in the Bible has in its support any evidence admissible in a court of law. It cannot be proved that the Battle of Blenheim ever was fought, that there was such a person as Julius Caesar, such an empire as Assyria. But as records of courts of justice are admissible, it can easily be proved that powerful, malevolent magicians once existed and were a scourge to mankind. The evidence, including confession, upon which certain women were convicted of witchcraft and executed, was without a flaw. It is still unimpeachable. The judge's decisions based on it were sound in logic and in law. Nothing in any existing court was ever more thoroughly proved than the charges of witchcraft and sorcery for which so many suffered death. If there were no witches, human testimony and human reason are alike destitute of value. Innate, natural, inherent, as innate ideas, that is to say, ideas that we are born with, having had them previously imparted to us. The doctrine of innate ideas is one of the most admirable faiths of philosophy, being itself an innate idea and therefore inaccessible to disproof, though Locke foolishly supposed himself to have given it a black eye. Among innate ideas may be mentioned the belief in one's ability to conduct a newspaper, in the greatness of one's country, in the superiority of one's civilization, in the importance of one's personal affairs, and in the interesting nature of one's diseases. Insurrection, an unsuccessful revolution, disaffection's failure to substitute misrule for bad government. Intention, the mind's sense of the prevalence of one set of influences over another set, an effect whose cause is imminence, immediate or remote, of the performance of an involuntary act. Interpreter, one who enables two persons of different languages to understand each other by repeating to each what it would have been to the interpreter's advantage for the other to have said. Intimacy, a relation into which fools are providentially drawn for their mutual destruction. Two sideless powders, one in blue and one in white, together drew, and having each a pleasant sense of the other powder's excellence, forsook their jackets for the snug enjoyment of a common mug. So close their intimacy grew, one paper would have held the two. Two confidences straight they fell, less anxious each to hear than tell. Then each remorsefully confessed to all the virtues he possessed, acknowledging he had them in so high a degree it was a sin. The more they said, the more they felt their spirits with motion melt, till tears of sentiment expressed their feelings. Then they effervesced. So nature executes her feats of wrath on friends and sympathies. The good old rule who won't apply, that you are you and I am I. Introduction. A social ceremony invented by the devil for the gratification of his servants and the plaguing of his enemies. The introduction attains its most benevolent development in this country, being indeed closely related to our political system. Every American being the equal of every other American, it follows that everybody has the right to know everybody else, which implies the right to introduce without request or permission. The Declaration of Independence should have read thus: We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life and the right to make that of another miserable by thrusting upon him an incalculable quantity of acquaintances, liberty, particularly the liberty to introduce persons to one another without first ascertaining if they are not already acquainted as enemies, and the pursuit of another's happiness with a running pack of strangers. Inventor. A person who makes an ingenious arrangement of wheels, levers, and springs, and believes it civilization. Novel. A short story padded, a species of composition bearing the same relation to literature that the panorama bears to art, as it is too long to be read at a sitting. The impressions made by its successive parts are successively effaced, as in the panorama. Unity, totality of effect, is impossible, for besides the few pages last read, all that is carried in mind is the mere plot of what has gone before. To the romance, the novel is what photography is to painting. Its distinguishing principle, probability, corresponds to the literal actuality of the photograph and puts it distinctly into the category of reporting, whereas the free wing of the romancer enables him to mount to such altitudes of imagination as he may be fitted to attain, and the first three essentials of the literary art are imagination, imagination, and imagination. The art of writing novels, such as it was, is long dead everywhere except in Russia, where it is new. Peace to its ashes, some of which have a large sale. November, the 11th, 12th of a weariness. Notoriety, the fame of one's competitor for public honors, the kind of renown almost accessible and acceptable to mediocrity, a Jacob's ladder leading to the vaudeville stage with angels ascending and descending. Noumenon, that which exists as distinguished from that which merely seems to exist, the latter being a phenomenon. The noumenon is a bit difficult to locate. It can be apprehended only by a process of reasoning, which is a phenomenon. Nevertheless, the discovery and exposition of noumena offer a rich field for what Louise calls the endless variety and excitement of philosophic thought. Hurrah, therefore, for the noumenon. Nonsense. The objections that are urged against this excellent dictionary. Neighbor, one whom we are commanded to love as ourselves, and who does all he knows how to make us disobedient. Nepotism, appointing your grandmother to office for the good of the party. Newtonian, pertaining to a philosophy of the universe invented by Newton, who discovered that an apple will fall to the ground, but was unable to say why. His successors and disciples have advanced so far as to be able to say when. Noise, a stench in the ear, undomesticated music, the chief product and authenticating sign of civilization.